Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider Podcast for Monday, October the 6th. I'm Zach Ewing, along with Koki Riley and Scott Rabelais, two of the finest writers to ever cover the LSU Fighting Tigers. See, I can say that. I can say two of, and it's just indiscriminate. You don't. I'm complimenting you without being specific.
You could say with it two of the finest writers in this room.
I could say you're two of the finest writers in the world. I'm not saying how many is in that number. But no, they are very fine writers. You should read their work at theadvocate.com/LSU. And it's South Carolina week. And so we're going to be talking about that. It's a very rainy Monday. So hopefully you have a nice place to listen to this podcast and get you ready for LSU South Carolina on Saturday. We will have a preview podcast for you on Thursday, which will be hosted by Mr. Rabelais here. And we will do predictions and all of that good stuff. But we wanted to start the week with kind of a larger picture discussion about these teams and specifically their quarterbacks, guys, because you could draw a lot of similarities between Garrett Nussmeier and LaNorris Sellers just with the hype they received in the preseason, Scott, and like how they just haven't quite lived up to it so far.
Yeah, they were at the SEC Media Days. They were preseason first and second team All-SEC quarterbacks. Sellers was one, and Nussmeier was two, and Heisman candidates, and receiving all the hype. Maybe not Arch Manning level hype, but a lot of hype. And no, it hasn't really panned out for either one so far. Nussmeier's had a lot of issues, apparently from this kind of still what I call a mystery ailment. Sellers got knocked out in the Vanderbilt game. He suffered a concussion and in that game, and then they've had a couple of losses. So South Carolina's started ranked pretty highly, and they're out of the AP top 25. So it hasn't been a September to remember for either guy, but there's still a lot of season left, and both of them could help their cases, help their teams, help their cause with a win Saturday night in Tiger Stadium.
Yeah, Koki, you hate to put too much emphasis on the quarterback because it's easy to do that. But at the same time, it is the most important position. If you don't get good quarterback play, it's obviously very difficult to win games. And these teams, which were both preseason top 12 teams, I think.
Something like that.
LSU was like 9th, South Carolina was 11th or 12th, I think, to start the season. They have now lost a combined 3 games, and part of that, quite frankly, maybe the biggest part of it, is that they haven't gotten what they needed from these guys.
Well, I think that's probably the case with LSU in terms of the injury to Nussmeier, and there's other factors to that as well, but I think the injury to Nussmeier is a major factor. With South Carolina, it's a little bit more complex and complicated just because heading into the year, I wasn't very optimistic about the pieces they had around Sellers, and that's kind of been the case. Sellers has faced the highest pressure rate among any quarterback in the SEC so far this season. I think it's around 40%. At least heading into this past week, it was around 40%, and the South Carolina didn't play this week, so that number has stuck. But yeah, like I just don't really think Sellers has a lot of help right now. And outside Nick Harbor, they don't have a ton of great options at receiver. And defensively, they haven't been that nearly as good as they were last year when they had all those like NFL level players on that side of the ball. And the result has been Sellers being fine instead of great. And they needed him to be great in order for them to play up that level. But I'm also not 100% sure how much of that's on him or how much of that is on sort of the pieces around him. You can make a similar case to Garrett Nussmeier, but there's an injury with Nussmeier, and he's making pretty obvious mistakes. And with Sellers, I mean, there's things I can nit here and there with his game, but I think a lot of the issue with his performance has nothing to do with his actual performance.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we've talked an awful lot about Garrett Nussmeier, obviously, on this podcast, and we'll continue to do so. So I want to dig into Sellers a little bit more. First, the LSU Insider Podcast is brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac. You can command the road in a Cadillac where luxury, power, and presence come together. Experience it today at Jerry Lane Cadillac. Nuss, again, you mentioned the injury. Like, his numbers aren't too far off of last year, just the basic numbers, but I think the big thing with him, Rab, is that like he hasn't improved in a lot of areas, and then there has been a little bit of regression. And this may be all injury based, or maybe it's not. But the downfield passing game isn't there. He's obviously not getting the help from the run game. We've talked a lot about that. But Sellers with Sellers, there's like this very interesting. His passing numbers are actually better than they were last year. Okay, even in the Vanderbilt game, which was clearly his worst game before he got knocked out, he was 6 of 7 passing. Now the one incompletion was an interception, but his passer rating is higher than last year. He's like on pace for more touchdowns, fewer interceptions. Like he's actually he had a really good game against Missouri. He had a really good game against Kentucky, but rushing the ball, he's not doing it as much, and it's not nearly as effective either.
Yeah, I mean, and then maybe they're passing a little more because they've been behind, and again, it doesn't help them to run the ball as much. But he's the kind of quarterback that you worry about, that can beat you with his arm and his legs. And if he's not running the ball as much anymore, maybe he's got some kind of issue that we're not privy to. But it's. He's a danger though, and that dual threat kind of guy who can give you trouble. I think this LSU defense is better prepared to deal with those kind of guys this year than they were last year. Although Trinidad Chambliss looked pretty good against LSU in Ole Miss, but if that game was in Tiger Stadium, maybe things would have gone a little more LSU's way. But I think it just comes down to Sellers is just doesn't quite have the supporting cast that he had last year, and people expected that he's going to make a leap, so he's just going to take the team along with him in 2025, and that hasn't been the case. I remember Koki and I were flying back from the Clemson game. We're sitting in the airport in Charlotte watching them play Virginia Tech the day after the LSU game, and we're like, Virginia Tech's not any good, and they eventually fired their coach, and South Carolina just didn't wow you that much. They just didn't. It was like, they kind of grinded out a win over a team that was not any good, and I think it's kind of been a harbinger of what kind of season they've had.
And Sellers is an unbelievable athlete, especially when he's getting downhill, and I think LSU fans definitely saw that last season. But there's times where he doesn't have a lot of nuance with his throws, where he's I wouldn't say he's aiming, but I'd say there's more line drive. He's not really layering in passes the same way Nussmeier is. He's kind of the opposite quarterback as Nussmeier in a decent amount of ways. But again, he's an uber athlete. I don't think he's going to be penalized too much by NFL evaluators this year, because they're going to see the talent around him, and they're going to sort of realize that it wasn't an easy circumstance for him to do what he's been doing so far this season. And as Zach sort of mentioned, like, he's had some good games and some good performances, like the Missouri game, like the Kentucky game. Granted, Kentucky's not very good, but the Missouri game was on the road, and he played well despite the fact that they only scored 20 points in that game. So I just really feel like Sellers is like this Sellers performance this year. Like, out of all the young quarterbacks who have kind of struggled, I'm probably the least concerned about him. I guess they're all young quarterbacks because they're in college, but out of all the college quarterbacks, like the hyped up college quarterbacks, like the Heisman contenders, I'm not as concerned about him, even though I don't think he's going to be a real Heisman contender this year, as some thought.
No, not with the season South Carolina's having. Just to underline my point, last year Sellers 166 rush attempts, 674 yards. It's 4.1 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns. Now in college, of course, rushing attempts include sacks. Okay,
I don't understand.
I don't understand either, but
as they should.
Just for context.
I'm totally against.
That is a
we
podcast
can have
for
a
the
whole
off-season,
podcast. I'm
because
ready.
I'll fight you on that. But 33 sacks last year. Okay, he's got 14 this year. That is on pace for exactly 33 sacks again. So that's not the issue. Okay, he's being sacked basically at the same rate he was last year. But this year he has 48 rush attempts. So last year was 166. This year's 48. He's on pace for about 115. So less. Now, as you mentioned, Scott, maybe they're just behind, and so they're having to throw the ball more. There's not as many designed runs, etc. But in those 48 attempts, only 98 yards rushing. 2 yards per attempt, only 1 touchdown. Like, it just hasn't been there. And I have not done a deep film review to see how teams are defending him, if they're just saying, we're going to take that away from you and make you beat us with your arm. Or if maybe there's an injury situation, maybe he's just, going through the thing where he's trying to impress NFL evaluators and show them that he can be a pass-first quarterback. I don't know what the issue is, but the truth of the matter is he is woefully behind where he was as a rusher last year.
Well, certainly, you give defensive coordinators in the SEC a year to study you and break you down, and obviously they haven't just played SEC teams, but you give teams all this chance to look at you over the offseason. They're going to find other ways to defend you, and you have to match that with some new facets to your game, and maybe he's not doing a good job of that. I think that's been a little bit of with Nussmeier this year. Obviously, whatever physical ailment he's been dealing with is part of the problem. But teams come back and try to scheme up new ways to defend you, and maybe then South Carolina are not matching that with their preparation and what they're doing. So, but he's still a very talented quarterback and one of the best that LSU is going to play this year, and a very, very dangerous one. But it's going to be interesting to see if he starts. Maybe he will start running more against LSU. I don't think it's necessarily a recipe for success for South Carolina. I think LSU can have Harold Perkins kind of track him down and deal with him. But he's a big guy. What is he? Like 240 or something?
Something like that.
He's a load to bring down. So I'm a little surprised that they're not doing more of that. Sometimes too, college coaches kind of outsmart themselves. It's like, this is working, but that's what they're expecting us to do. So we're going to do something else. Maybe there's a little of that going on with South Carolina.
That's
a
good point.
Sellers is big, fast, and strong, and when someone's big, fast, and strong, you try to not make them as big, fast, and strong, and that means taking away their legs and turning them into a passer, and that has worked to a degree so far this season. But I think he's also improved as a passer compared to where he was last season when LSU faced them. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's throwing some nice deep balls this year too. LSU fans, of course, will remember last year in Columbia, he left the game injured, and that really kind of allowed LSU to get back into the game because he was giving them big time
That's why they
problems.
won.
He ran for 88 yards. He had a 75-yard touchdown run. He had also thrown for 113 yards in that first half.
We'll get into this next week, but not next week. We'll get into this later this week. But with Sellers, it's just, I think LSU's defense wasn't very well prepared to face a quarterback like Sellers and a running quarterback. We talked so much. We talked ad nauseum last year about LSU's problems defensively in terms of stopping running quarterbacks, and I think they're better set up to sort of enact that game plan that we've been talking about against Sellers to force him into being more of a passer this season with the personnel that they have.
Yeah. And here's the larger picture here as we kind of continue this conversation. Sellers and Nussmeier are just two of these quarterbacks who were sort of, we talked about Heisman and best quarterbacks in the country and who would you like to have and number one draft pick and all that stuff. These are two of the guys. DJ Lagway at Florida's another one. The biggest name is probably Arch Manning at Texas. Like a lot of these guys.
Cade Klubnik. He played well at North Carolina Saturday.
They just haven't lived up to it yet. Drew Aller at Penn State, same. They haven't lived up to it yet. That doesn't mean they can't in the second half of the season. But I don't know. I guess the main takeaway for me is that you just got to be careful in the summer making a lot of projections and assumptions. But it is weird that this many guys have all struggled.
Yeah, especially with Arch. That's the one that really pops out to me. You just sort of felt like there was some sort of sense of optimism if so many people who know what they're talking about, not just like, the hot take prognosticators out there on ESPN or whatnot. This was like real people who really understand the game, and a lot of them were sort of encouraged by the little snippets that we saw from Arch last season, and this year he's just kind of fallen flat. And between that and the DJ Lagway struggles, doesn't seem like he's always been 100%, even though he was much better this week. And you kind of go down the line, and there's been a lot of struggle, even outside the SEC, like Drew Aller and Cade Klubnik, and the high expectations we had for those two programs heading into the year. There's a lot of examples of this, and combine that with the Nussmeier issues, and it's a growing list of quarterbacks who we thought would all be sort of contending for top spots, not just for the Heisman Trophy, but also for the NFL draft. That just hasn't been the case so far this year.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And instead you've got Dante Moore at Oregon, who's kind of become this Heisman favorite and maybe one of the favorites to go number one overall in the draft. And Ty Simpson at Alabama has been better than I think people thought. He's been, at least since that first game, he's been really, really
those
good.
two guys were not starting quarterbacks last year, so which is why, like,
You
obviously,
just
I think,
don't know,
yeah, people knew they were talented, but we just didn't really know. Like, we
Carson
had more of a
Beck.
sample. Yeah, we had
Carson
more.
Beck.
Yeah.
It's like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, that one is a major surprise. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a nationwide trend, and we're going to see it this weekend. Obviously, LSU South Carolina will, maybe be a launching off point for one of these guys for the rest of the year, but it could also just be the continuation of struggles for them. So, tell you what, we're going to take a break. We're going to continue on that theme when we come back. Got to talk about what happened in the SEC last week. Speaking of Arch Manning, Texas losing to Florida, how that resets the SEC picture, and also how that sort of sets up this October for LSU, which is, just 3 games in the month because of the bye week, but 3 pretty darn big games. So we'll talk about all that when we come back here on the LSU Sports Insider.
I think the biggest thing that separates us is our people. We have a really amazing staff that really care about their customers, really care about our product. At Jerry Lane Cadillac, we value trust and transparency above all else. We have a little bit of something for everyone. So whether it be the 2025 Escalade, any of the smaller crossover vehicles, the XT4, 5, and 6, we've also got a wide variety of new EVs, including the 2025 electric Escalade IQ. I think the product lineup right now is the best that it's ever been in Cadillac.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional health care for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You give me love.
Did they ask you to do the commercial too?
Yeah, but they just gave me one line.
Bet like a Caesar. Like, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna tell them how Caesar's Sportsbook is just so easy to use that you can watch and bet thousands of sports events, even some NFL games.
They'll probably show us betting on our favourite players and teams at all the Vegas hotspots too.
Like, we have time for that montage.
I told him I couldn't do it.
They couldn't afford me.
Louisiana's biggest country music festival, Boots on the Bayou, starring Chris Stapleton, Cody Johnson, October 31st and November 1st at the Lamar Dixon Expo Center with Riley Green, Parker McCullum, Carly Pierce, and many more. Get tickets now at VOTBmusic.com. Boots on the Bayou, where country comes alive.
And welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. We are brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac, the Baton Rouge Clinic, and the Boots on the Bayou Music Festival. And speaking of Boots on the Bayou, we are going to do our Around the SEC segment. So let me tell you about our friends at Boots on the Bayou, especially if you are a country music fan. You should mark your calendars for October 31st and November 1st when Boots on the Bayou takes over the Lamar Dixon Expo Center. This 2-day festival brings superstar headliners. It's Cody Johnson on Friday. It's Chris Stapleton on Saturday. We've also got Parker McCollum, Riley Green, Carly Pierce, and more. That's not the Riley Green who plays for the Tigers. Go Mariners. For the ultimate weekend, you can upgrade to the VIP Platinum experience with front row access, early entry, unlimited complimentary bites and sips from Louisiana's top vendors. That sounds nice. Climate-controlled restrooms and a private lounge. Tickets are limited, so secure yours now at BOTBmusic.com. All right, as we go around the SEC with Boots on the Bayou, it was kind of supposed to be a slow week. A lot of teams were off, but this Texas loss at Florida, Rab, has some serious repercussions for the rest of the year.
Oh man, that was pretty shocking. I mean, Florida's just had this gauntlet of a schedule, and you're like, can they win any of them? Yeah, they lost at LSU, they lost at Miami, but they come home and took care of Texas. Yeah, they really did. 29-21. Maybe kind of tried to blow it at the end, but Billy Napier
has like a hole in his head or something. I don't know what he was doing.
Called that timeout it'll with under 2 minutes left when Texas didn't have any more timeouts.
No, don't do a 10-second runoff. We'd like this game to keep going to see if Texas can come back. What is he doing?
But the guy's got 9 lives as a coach. You got to say, every time everybody's ready to say, okay, this is the week he's getting fired, then they come through with a win like they did when they beat LSU last year and they got on that winning streak. They still got a lot of tough games left ahead of them, but what a win for Florida and what a blow for Texas, the preseason AP number 1. Not Cokie Riley's preseason AP number 1, but the overall number 1. And they've lost 2 games.
AP number 1 is doing so well.
Clemson,
38-10 week, 38-10 win this week.
Forget the other 5 weeks. Don't worry about
that's right. Yeah, Dabo Sweeney said this was our season opener. We just have to look at it that way. And I guess that's a good way to look at it. But man, just. Huge implications for Texas. Cedric Golden, who has my job, is the columnist in the Austin American Statesman over there in Austin. He said I saw him on TV after Texas lost at Ohio State to start the season, which is no huge sin to lose at Ohio State. They're still number 1. He said I think they're going to lose at least 3 games this year, maybe more. And I don't think you expect them to lose to Florida. They got Oklahoma this week in the Red River rivalry in Dallas, and they've got some other tough games
Still
ahead.
Georgia.
Booger McFarland, the former LSU great, who's on ABC, said, I don't see a path to them to the college football playoff right now. And I agree with him. I don't think they're done losing. And they're at this point still 3-2, but all the way out of the AP poll, they're one of the biggest underachievers you have to look at right now because they didn't look great against some of these other tomato cans they were playing outside of conference play, and they've just got a tough SEC slate the rest of the way.
Yeah, and they could probably you talk about path to the playoff, like because only one of the losses is in the SEC. They could potentially lose another one and win some sort of tiebreaker and be, like there was last year, a 6-2 logjam and get into the SEC title game, get into the playoff that way. But the way they're playing right now, Cokie, I just don't think that's realistic.
I can't see that happening with the state of their offense and the state of Arch Manning at the moment. He needs a lot more seasoning and a lot more time, and that's just being polite. That's if you're being optimistic, because the way he's playing right now, I don't know. Their offense is, and they can't run the ball either. So they can't run the ball. The offensive line is young and not very experienced. And you kind of combine those things with a quarterback who looks pretty good one play and looks pretty awful the next. And you're kind of looking at this offense that just doesn't really have it right now. And even the defense didn't shut down Florida to the level that we thought they would. And this is a Florida team that lost fairly handily to LSU, that lost fairly handily to Miami, that lost to South Florida, and has a coach that is, on the precipice of potentially getting fired. So if they can't win this game, even though it was on the road, then what chances do they have against Georgia? What chances do they have even against Oklahoma team that might not have its quarterback? So, I know John Mateer is hurt right now, but do they even need John Mateer to win this game?
And that defense is
maybe not
nasty.
Yeah.
The other SEC result worth mentioning, I think, is Alabama beating Vanderbilt 30-14 at home. Crimson Tide had that awful loss in Tallahassee to start the season. They've been rolling since. Are they y'all's SEC favorite at this point, or who do you have as? It's kind of a lot of really good teams, no great teams year in this league. Who is your SEC favorite right now, Scott?
I can't. I think they're in the mix, certainly. But even though they beat Georgia on the road, it was a close game. I still think Georgia is one of those teams up there. You have to say Texas A&M. Ole Miss has a schedule.
I'm going Ole Miss, man.
You're going. Yeah. They go to Georgia, and they have another. And they played Mississippi State at the end of the season. They have another tough road game.
I believe they play Oklahoma and Georgia at the end of this month. But really, if you just split those two, win everywhere else, you're at least going to Atlanta.
That's probably true. But going to play the Egg Bowl in Starkville is not going to be easy. Mississippi State, I know they lost at A&M, but I think they're a very improved team.
Yeah.
They've lost back-to-back games at Tennessee and Texas A&M, but I think they're very improved. Texas A&M, obviously they have a good defense, and Reed's a good quarterback. They just don't wow me either. But that's a lot of teams in the nation. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are just very good but not great this year.
Who wows you? Period. Not just in the conference, but I mean in the country.
Yeah, right now Miami's playing the best
Miami
of anybody, and Oregon's got a good win. But then, like as you said, you've kind of questioned how good is their win at Penn State. You have to kind of wonder about that right now. So it's a I mean you could say Alabama's the favorite, but I'm still waiting. I still think they're also very capable of throwing in another clunker like they did against Florida State to start the season, or they did a couple of times last year. So but the point you made about Texas is good. If they they're kind of like LSU, kind of like you think of LSU right now. If they can get their act together, if the quarterback can play better and they get some better production on offense, they have a good defense. They only have the one conference loss. I think they got a really good chance to beat Oklahoma on Saturday. I know that's probably counterintuitive, but I think they can. And if they do, maybe that sparks them on a run throughout the second half of the season. So it's pick a favorite. Give me a hat, and I'll pick a name. I'll pick a name out of it. You want to say Alabama, fine. You want to say Georgia, fine. You want to say Texas A&M or Ole Miss, fine. But I think there's a bunch of teams that could end up. No idea who's going to wind up in Atlanta at the end of the year, which is great. It's kind of great to see.
It's a fun year. We've seen some Red River games play into the 40s. 20 points might win that game on Saturday. I mean, seriously, those defenses going head to head. A backup quarterback for OU and struggling Arch Manning for UT. It's going to be the other game Saturday is Missouri hosting Alabama. Missouri's the other undefeated team left in the conference. And I haven't played many teams yet, but I say that Alabama's schedule, what's left, it's not easy. I mean, they got to go at Missouri. They're home for Tennessee, then they're at South Carolina. Then, of course, they have LSU, Oklahoma, and the Iron Bowl in November.
And they're not going to win all those
games. You would think that there's another loss in there for them somewhere.
Going back to Manning, though, if I may hijack the program for a second, what is the problem? I saw someone, I think it was Louis Riddick, said he doesn't see the field well. He
might not. Yeah.
And it's like.
Is that important for a quarterback? I'm kidding. Yeah,
that's right.
Of course it is. Yeah.
He doesn't see the field. It doesn't. He just throws balls up sometimes, and it's like, man, it's not Newman High School anymore. It's not double A ball
St. Paul's or whoever
in Louisiana. And obviously there's talent there, but I think we all agree there wouldn't have been, like, let's just be honest. There wouldn't be this if his name was Arch Riley or Arch Rabelais or Arch Ewing. He wouldn't have gotten this amount of hype at this point.
Yeah.
He may be a great quarterback overall, but there's a little voice in me in the back of me. Remember what Steve Spurrier said on a podcast over the summer that I heard about. I said, couldn't beat out Quinn Ewers last year, and Quinn Ewers was only a 7th round draft pick. So,
you make a great point, because reading the field is not, like you say, he can learn that. That's not a skill you can really, you can get better at it. But if that's where you struggle as a quarterback, that's more of an innate skill. Like that's not something that you can just, you can try and everything, but I'm sure he is trying, and if it's not there, I don't know what that means.
Just
for
ask Jackson Arnold and the Auburn fans if
very talented, athletic guy, can make all the throws, is athletic with his feet, all that kind of stuff. But if you are not processing at the necessary speed, you're going to have problems.
Exactly. And reading defenses, understanding concepts, but not just understanding them, but like processing them in real time as fast as that needs to be. And that's an issue for him. It's definitely an issue for Jackson Arnold and Auburn. It's a problem. And when you go up to the next level in the NFL, it becomes a whole another conversation again, right? Whether you can actually do that or not.
And someone in his defense Saturday, Florida beat on him pretty good. I mean, they pressured him a lot. They sacked him a lot. I mean, we saw his helmet. He had to come out for a play late on their last possession. His helmet came off. You have to set out one play. So he wasn't getting a lot of help from that offensive line. So it's not all on him.
It's not a good offensive line. It's a lot of new pieces. They had to retool the unit after a very veteran one last year, and kind of combine that with their lack of ability to run the ball at all. And I think they had their leading rusher the other day, Quintravian Weisner, 8 carries for 11 yards, leading running back rusher. So
we got to move on. But we're going to talk about how this affects LSU specifically real quick. And I do think like, look, the win over Florida looks better now because Florida obviously is something. Now they still not exactly what they were expected to be, but if they can go knock off somebody else, and all of a sudden you look at the end of the year, they're, I don't know, 7-5, 8-4, and like you could say that's a quality win for LSU. But as we look at this picture and where the Tigers fit into it, you made a great point this morning in our text thread, Rab, about LSU. And they only play 3 games in October, but like, you want to have a November to remember, you got to set it up with October.
100%. I mean, South Carolina at home, LSU's more than a touchdown favorite. But a game, a LaNorris Sellers can certainly put you on upset watch. Then they go to Vanderbilt, who just lost it at Alabama, but you're going to Vanderbilt, and that's certainly not the kind of game that we thought of with LSU and Vanderbilt over the years. And then you come home to finish the month against Texas A&M, which is, again, I don't think they're the best team in the country, but they're certainly playing well, and they have a good defense, and they got reason to. They're finding ways to win, which is impressive. So you need to go 3-0. You can't do worse than 2-1. If you go 1-2 or 0-3, which I don't think they're going 0-3, obviously the season is over. So this is a big defining stretch for LSU to set them up for a November where you've got obviously Alabama, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and Oklahoma, and you've got to hold serve at home, and you got to go win 2 out of 3 on the road. You have to figure at Alabama, at Vandy, Alabama, and Oklahoma, and so you've got to win these games. It's not must win because obviously anything's theoretically possible. You could lose one of these games and then run the table and still make the college football playoff, but it would behoove LSU to win all these games in October, and I think they can, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, and when you put it like that, okay, they've got to at least go 2-1 in these October games. Well, look at the last 2 of them. At Vandy, like I know Vandy lost to Alabama. Vandy has been a wagon, okay? Vandy is good, and Texas A&M is obviously good, and you do not want to be in a position where you need to win both of those games, Koki. So that makes this weekend. Again, you can't say must win on October the 6th, but this is a really important game for LSU.
I think it kind of is must win because, like, even if you look past October, as Rab's been mentioning, you have the Alabama game on the road, and they're not going to be favored heading into that, even if they win these next 3 games, I think. More likely, very likely they won't be favored.
Yeah, we'll see what Alabama does too, but right now they wouldn't be, certainly.
So that and then Oklahoma on the road, so there's so many obstacles outside of October that if you don't go 3-0 in this month, and you're not feeling good about yourself heading into a couple of games where you could easily lose both of them. It's really hard to imagine this team making the playoff. If they honestly, it's hard for me to imagine them making the playoff if they don't go 3-0 this month.
Yeah, because you don't go 3-0, you're gonna have to run the table in November. And 2 of those games, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, you should win, but at Alabama and Oklahoma, you don't want to be in a spot where you've got to win both of those.
And as we've said before on the podcast, you could see a 9-3 SEC team making the playoff, but you can't count on that.
No,
you can't count on that. So. You got to keep winning, baby. I mean, the college football is getting more like the NFL all the time, but a 10-7 team might make the playoffs. The equivalent of that in the SEC would be 7-5. I mean, college football 7-5. There's 7-5 teams making the 12-team college football playoffs, so you got to win.
You're spending Christmas in Memphis for the Liberty Bowl at 7-5.
Oh, don't say that.
Whatever it is.
I want to hear that.
Could be better than that, I suppose. But nothing against Memphis. It's just the Liberty Bowl always looks cold to me. Everyone always looks cold.
The one Liberty Bowl I went to, and when LSU was in college in 1985, it was like 13 degrees.
I actually like the city of Memphis a lot, but that's a bowl game where I'm like, I don't need to go see that. It always looks cold on New Year's. Okay, so that really sets the table for this South Carolina game, and we will have a full preview pod on that on Thursday. We'll have our predictions, all that good stuff. But first, just a quick note on injuries. We don't have a new injury report because LSU's coming off of the open date, but we will set you up for what to look for this week. And that injury report is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you are in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. And that injury, Koki, like Caden Durham is probably the biggest name, but also those offensive linemen, Weston Davis and Paul Mabenga, all kind of banged up. I think LSU can be hopeful they get all 3 of them back.
Yeah, I would say so. Gabe Relaford's out for the year on the defensive line. But I think Davis and Mubenga, it sounds like they're both trending in the right direction to play this week. And the same goes with Caden Durham with his ankle injury. So I think those are all good things for LSU if they have, their starting guard, their starting right tackle. Maybe Carey's current right tackle is the better move, but that could be that's a whole other debate.
We talked about that on Thursday. So,
but I think this team's better off at guard with Mubenga. So,
but the only thing I caution about Mubenga is it's a high ankle sprain. That can take a while to get back. Davis had a concussion. I'd still like to hear more about what happened.
I'm dying to know what happened.
He broke his nose and got a concussion in pregame warmups.
How's that possible?
How exactly is that?
Somebody they kind of go through some light reps on the line. Did somebody slip and get his hand up in his face?
I don't know.
Did someone was he walking on the sideline and someone had a helmet and they were moving it over?
It
sounds like something kind of freakish.
We got to know what happened.
It sounds
was there an altercation? Was it some Mark Sanchez situation? I hope not.
Wow. You went there. Right.
I don't know.
It's interesting. And,
but Aaron Anderson too. We got to hear more about him. He had multiple things wrong with him.
Many things
from the Ole Miss game, and then Garrett Nussmeier. Fortunately, of course, once again, it's an SEC game, so there will be availability reports throughout the second half of the week, and then game day. So we will have some definitive things because schools can't really hide things too much because it's an SEC week.
Speaking of hiding things, do you think Brian Kelly will break down and put us on the availability report at any point, even if it's just to say he's available?
I think he might. Yeah, he's been asked about it so much.
I kind of think if you do that, you're admitting that you probably should have before, and that's where I
can't do it for that reason. Yeah.
It's an interesting situation, but those availability reports come out. We get first one Wednesday. Is that right?
Yes.
So we will know more by Thursday's podcast on those injuries. So that is our episode for today. Amelia LaCour was our producer. Our sponsors are Jerry Lane Cadillac, the Baton Rouge Clinic, and the Boots in the Bayou Music Festival. It's during LSU's bye week, people. Just saying. If you want to get tickets, botbmusic.com. For Koki Riley and Scott Rabelais, I'm Zach Ewing. This has been the LSU Sports Insider.